If your community association has a good relationship with their current management company, you can stop listening. However, if you are struggling with your current service provider, we'd love to talk with you to see if Omni Community Management would be a good fit. Transparency, education, communication, and trust are just 4 of the qualities that set Omni apart. This is Rolf Crocker, CEO of Omni. Call us at 916-965-8964. That's 916-965-8964. Online at omni-mgt.com. That's omni-mgt.com.
HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. Please sit back, relax, and join Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick for an hour of entertaining information about HOAs and HOA law.
Well, good morning, Sacramento. Thanks to Frank Jolly, we're a little bit late to the air, but we're here.
No, thanks to him, we're on the air.
Yeah.
Wow, I guess the tower went out for a while.
Something like that. Crazy stuff going on. But anyways, the Saturday HOA Brunch is proud to have the Memorial Day weekend special this weekend.
Oh, we're excited about the show today. Memorial Day weekend. So this is a show where we didn't want to inconvenience any board members to come in for Battle of Board Members. So we're not going to be having that this week. However, we're going to be having a pretty interesting subject.
Oh, man. I'm jumping out of my chair right now.
Community care facilities. It's a really big issue, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. Community care facilities in community associations. You want to join the conversation? It's
888-923-1380, 888-923-1380.
And the text line is...
You got the text line. You know that?
I got the text line. It's 916-747-4622, 916-747-4622. Since we sometimes get texts before the show, we have a couple texts, and because you did inform some of our valuable listeners that we would be talking about community care facilities today. So we are going to really get into these issues about what is a community care facility, why do boards need to care about it, why do community association managers need to care about it, what can they do about it, do they need to allow them into associations, do they constitute a business, are they a residential use, what kind of restrictions can associations impose. Now also what we're going to do is we do want to mention the law regarding carbon monoxide detectors as well, because this is a big issue as well.
That's going to be an extra bonus?
This is right. This is the bonus subject, because it is also super important now that the different building departments are enforcing this. So what that is about, just to lay the scene for that one, but we'll be talking about that at the end of the show, and that is that when community associations get something done to the exteriors of the buildings, Jonathan, like say dry rot repairs to balconies or siding, right? Your background, you have a lot of,
I guess,
a big background on that,
look
right?
At my resume.
Right. Just look at the resume. And the building departments are now enforcing the law that homes in multi-unit developments must have carbon monoxide detectors in addition to fire detectors. So what the building departments do is before they sign off, right, on a permit for, say, dry rot on a balcony, it has nothing to do with the interior, mind you, well, they will require an inspection of the interiors of all the homes in that building.
How do you get into
for a
unit?
carbon monoxide detector?
How do they get into every unit?
Inconvenient at the least, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in major production. And so we actually, I have specifically talked with some building departments on behalf of community associations and told them about this plight. It is very difficult for an association that's just doing, say, balcony repairs to go and get access to, say, 5 homes in a building, and all at the same time, right? The building official for the building department of the particular county, they're not going to want to come back and forth, right, to go visit all the different units. They're going to want to go ahead and do it all at once.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, how do you require that a homeowner is going to be available when the building department wants to be available so that they can go in and inspect the interiors of every unit?
Right. We're not talking about an apartment complex where the building manager has a key to all the homes and he could just shuffle a building official through, pursuant to the lease of all the apartment renters.
Right.
All right. So
Yeah, that's
that's a good subject. So we'll talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about community care facilities. What is a community care facility? Well, first let's frame the issue. The issue is that there are types of homes in communities that seem more like a business, right? And
Yeah.
So, right. Okay. And so it is definitely an issue. Go ahead, Jonathan. What's a community care facility?
I think there's a lot of different community care facilities. I think there's daycares. I think there's halfway houses. I think there might be assisted living. I think that those might be some different types of community care facilities. Now, being the amateur that I am when it comes to the Davis-Sterling Act, I thought when I read into it previously that you couldn't operate a business out of a community association. So I'm a little bit confused with this whole topic altogether, because how do you have a daycare in an HOA? And, if that's a business, I thought you couldn't run a business.
Well, a community care facility is any facility that is operated to provide, and this is important, non-medical residential care, day treatment, adult daycare, foster family agency services for children, adults, or children and adults, including but not limited to the physically handicapped, mentally impaired, incompetent persons, and abused or neglected children. So it's these types of homes, like you mentioned a couple of them. You mentioned daycare. So what do you mean by daycare?
Well, a daycare, traditionally, when I went to daycare, my mom dropped me off. She cut the lady a check. Then she watched us all day with a big group of kids, fed us snacks, took us out to the playground, took us out to the pool. But it was an actual business that wasn't inside of a community association.
I got you.
So what you're saying,
So you're saying last week, before you came to work, your mom dropped you? No.
No, but so now these are community associations are required to let these types of facilities operate in their association.
Within a community association, within a condominium association, with a homeowner association. So these are, we haven't got to that. We're defining them first. So the different types, there is the one you just described, which is daycare, and that is where a working family drops off the child to a home, and you're hearkening back to your youth where it was actually sort of like a preschool, something like that.
Similar.
Right? Yeah, but it wasn't in a condominium association. It wasn't in a community. It wasn't in a residential area. It was in an area zoned business.
Correct.
Right.
Commercial, zoned commercial.
Right. So it's a broad definition, and it's basically a care facility that provides, and this is the important part, non-medical residential care. So that's pretty broad. You also mentioned another one, and you called it a halfway house. So what do you mean by halfway house? Is that that a derogatory term? I don't think it is.
I think it's probably a place where someone might go and get some help for alcohol abuse or something, or right? A halfway house?
No. You're thinking of like a sober care facility.
Are those allowed?
And those are allowed as well.
Okay.
All right. I think we're going to break.
We are, and I got to do a little bit more research because this topic has my head spinning. But we'll be back from the break, and we have you here, counselor, so you'll be able to break this all down for us. We'll be back shortly.
Have you ever heard of the saying, a person's home is their castle? Of course you have. But sometimes a construction defect can turn your castle into a catastrophe. If this happens to you, you need proper and professional representation. You need Angius&Terry, LLP. For over 30 years, the attorneys at Angius&Terry have been effectively serving homeowners and community associations, recovering more than $500 million on behalf of their clients. Angius&Terry strives to ensure that your construction defect claims are prosecuted in an aggressive and cost-effective manner. Angius&Terry will also continue to work with homeowners and community associations after the construction defect claims are concluded to make sure that the money received from builders is spent wisely and that your interests are protected during the repair process. Don't let a construction defect turn your castle into a catastrophe. Call Angius&Terry LLP today at 916-567-1400. That's 916-567-1400. Online at angius-terry.com. Angius&Terry LLP. Professional Parking Enforcement, or PPE, was created to provide effective parking solutions for all types of parking issues. PPE focuses on parking problems of HOAs and can quickly eliminate these problems through their system of property inspection, violation updating, ticketing, and enforcement. Contact PPE today at 702-283-0628, online at ppenv.com. PPE, promoting harmony in HOAs through parking and compliance enforcement. We take time to understand your community's needs.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We solve small problems before they become big ones.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We help make your community a better place to live.
Silver Creek Association Management.
It's what we do, because an association is more than just a bunch of homes. It's a community of people. We work with you to make better communities so homeowners can enjoy better lives.
Silver Creek Association Management. Online at sc-manage.com. That's sc-manage.com.
If your community association has a good relationship with their current management company, you can stop listening. However, if you are struggling with your current service provider, we'd love to talk with you to see if Omni Community Management would be a good fit. Transparency, education, communication, and trust are just 4 of the qualities that set Omni apart. This is Rolf Crocker, CEO of Omni. Call us at 916-965-8964. That's 916-965-8964. Online at omni-mgt.com. That's omni-mgt.com. Omni Community Management, your friend in the community association management industry for over 20 years.
News, opinion, insight. AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Back from break. And guess what? A famous doctor has called in, and she actually hosts a show right after us.
Oh, fantastic.
The phone lines are lighting up, so she's probably going to have some good information for us in regards to what these facilities
it's the
are.
doctor.
Yeah,
Dr. Zazio, right?
Yeah, Dr. Zazio. Dr. Zazio, can you hear us?
Hey, I can.
Can you help us out?
Good morning. I'm actually heading your way right now.
Yeah, you are.
Can you pick me up some bagels
Great
and
to
coffee?
hear from you. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to Jonathan.
So, of course, I'm a fan of yours and listen on my way in, my truck from beautiful Placerville. And, I don't know if you're going to get to this or not, but years ago, I had a couple rental properties. And I didn't want to work full-time when I went to school, so I created some, you had mentioned recovery homes earlier. And they were, like a halfway house. But I think one thing that's really important in this discussion is just this whole topic of licensure in terms of looking at care facilities, because I was able to do it pretty seamlessly because I had 6 or less people in the homes. And so, with like daycare you guys were talking about, if there's less than 6 people or 6 or less, there's no license that's required. And I think that that's a really important distinction, because anybody, and maybe in HOA situations it might be a little bit different, but pretty much 6 or less, anybody can open up a facility, and they're not regulated by anybody.
I think that's 90%. I agree with you, Doctor, 90% with what you said. And the magic number, not for daycare for children, but for the other types of facilities, the number is 6 or less. 6 or less, exactly. I agree with that. I also agree with the fact that there are different types of licenses that businesses normally have to get. And there is an exception by law. Right in the health and safety code that says that these different types of facilities, 6 people or less, they do not have to get different licenses. So that's sort of a money saver. And also, you also said that, well, there are some regulations that the facilities don't need to comply with. I agree with that as well. So they make it easy to have these facilities, just like you said, anyone can do it. They, however, and we're going to be getting into this also later, and that is that the homes and community associations, and they're not exempt, Doctor, from all laws or regulations, right? You're not saying that.
Well, no. I mean, I you know, I don't know that I can answer that specifically. I mean, I'm sure there's some regulations. I just know that, I mean, obviously there are issues with regard to, commercial areas and coding and all of that. I just know that I had them in a residential area, and, it was really, really easy. Not to say that the neighbors, weren't at times upset about it. But I was telling you guys that I live in a homeowners association community, and there is a residential board and care home for the elderly that's in there, and I was really shocked.
Do you know, Doctor, I have a
because
question
thought-
for you real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Since that's an elder adult care facility, do you know, is the business that's running the adult care facility, do they have to add the board of directors in the community association as an additional insured on their policy?
That I don't know, but I know that they attempted to prevent them from coming in because of the community, and apparently they got some kind of state exemption of some kind that allowed them to be in there, but I'm not sure about adding them on to the policy.
But now, so you were saying that you said two things. The first thing I'm interested in is these are facilities that you ran. Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
Yeah. So I've kind of switched gears a little bit, but yeah, I had two homes. Actually, I had three that were residential recovery homes. So people that had, chemical dependency problems,
sober
and that
living
kind
of
of
a thing.
Yeah. And they would live there, and they'd pay, basically a monthly rate. And again, 6 or less, I didn't have to get any kind of licensure, and it was very well run, so I didn't have any problems, in the community or that kind of thing. But there are a lot of facilities out there that are not being properly run, and people are being taken advantage of. And I don't know, I'm probably rambling now, but it's kind of that catch-22 of this 6 or less that doesn't have any governing, and I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah, well, you're right on point. I want to ask you a question then. So you had at 1.3, were any of those in community associations?
No, they weren't. They were just in residential areas.
Right. But regardless, did you sort of had to prove to your neighbors that you were going to be peaceful and not be a real adverse effect on them, right?
Well, honestly, guys, I just kind of slid in, and because I ran them pretty well, it was, I think, on the down low for a while, and then, as people were kind of coming and going, they picked up on it. But I really got to know my neighbors well and reassured them that, there was no dangerous people, and, that there were rules around sobriety and that kind of thing, and that relapses were grounds for them leaving. And, the tenants didn't bother anybody. So I overall never had any problems.
Yeah, it sounds like you ran a pretty tight ship for each of those homes. The users of the facilities, if they ran astray, they were out, huh?
Oh, yeah. And you've got to do that when you're dealing with, substance abuse issues, because, the risk for relapse is quite high. And, you're wanting to support the rest of the tenants there in their sobriety and their recovery, and, trying to make sure that, everybody's in a safe place.
Right. Real important. Yeah. And so on our end, what we have dealt with is when these types of homes are not run well, and they're in tight quarter communities, condominium associations, in these communities where you're basically within a couple feet of each other. And if they are not run well like yours, doctor, then you have major issues. That's when they call in the attorneys to try and deal with it.
Because there's a nuisance, right?
There's a nuisance, absolutely. And
Well, yeah, and I don't know, what recourse residents can have. I mean, honestly, as soon as I found out that there was a care facility in our association, my eyebrows were raised. Now, it's run very well. I wouldn't even know it's there. I just kind of was riding my horse one day, and I thought, I wonder what's going on with that big house on the hill. And I kind of investigated a little bit, and they said, oh, it's this care home. And I wouldn't have even known it. It's run very well, but I think that there's this tendency to go, oh my gosh, not in my community.
Right, right.
But they've got to live somewhere.
Right. It's NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the call. We look forward to seeing you in a couple minutes. Do you have any closing comments?
No, just wanted to kind of share that piece about the, licensure and, the differences. And, another, just as a side note, type of care facilities are what's called board and cares. And those are, similar type situations where you really see chronically mentally ill people, on medications and aren't able to, make their own meals and that kind of thing. And it's the same thing, 6 or less. Oftentimes they just don't require those licenses, and it's they're in the community, and not to say that they're bad or anything like that, but it's considerations when people are moving into either an association or a community to investigate whether or not that might be there, because some people can be affected by it.
Fantastic, very helpful. Our listeners appreciate it, Doctor.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
I hope that was a free consultation.
A free consultation by Dr. Zazio. Fantastic. Yeah, great information, and she is exactly right. That is, community associations must allow these different types of care facilities, non-medical care facilities, into their communities, but the communities are not completely defenseless. The communities, the associations, the board of directors, they do have the different tools to go ahead and enforce. Just because you have one of these residential care facilities in the community doesn't mean that you don't have to comply, Jonathan, with the CC&Rs, right? They don't have to comply with the provisions CC&Rs that you mentioned earlier. You said that, well, I thought that if it's a residential community that there is a prohibition against businesses, and this is a business. But the law provides that residential care facilities, community care facilities, whatever you want to call them, day treatments, adult care, foster, non-medical, that they are not a business. They are deemed to be residential.
All right. I've got a couple of questions that just popped into my head. So when we get back from the break, I have a couple of zingers for you. So stay with us, drive safe, and enjoy your long Memorial Day weekend.
Having trouble understanding your community association's reserve study? Does your HOA's reserve study seem to be written in a strange language? Hi, I'm Robert Browning, owner of the Browning Reserve Group. At the Browning Reserve Group, we have been providing easy-to-understand reserve studies since 1999. We actually listen to our communities and help them plan for the future. Find us online at browningrg.com. That's browningrg.com, or toll free at 877-708-0600. That's 877-708-0600. Clarity from complexity, the Browning Reserve Group.
If you are a community association or manager, you know your banking relationship is vital to your success. At Sacramento Bank of Commerce, a division of Redding Bank of Commerce, our industry expertise and personal attention make that task a breeze. With our specialized banking, lockbox, online banking, and remote deposit capture, trips to the bank are no longer necessary. And Sacramento Bank of Commerce can help your communities with a loan to repair, replace, or upgrade the investment. For local decisions and in-house processing, get in touch with our team today. Call Sacramento Bank of Commerce at 916-772-0131. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Did you see the story about the Homeowners Association? I wonder what their residents think.
I don't know, but I love my condominium association. The place looks great and is well managed, and our property values are increasing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Community Associations Institute, CAI, has helped us build a great community. They have tools for safeguarding our investment, including education for our board and professional training for our manager. Just visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Okay, responsiblecommunities.com.
The following is a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had numerous credit cards, and I was struggling with paying them off, so I made the call.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
The people at Trinity are very friendly. They will do whatever you need them to do in order for you to feel better about being in a very difficult place.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
AM 1380. The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
All right, I'm ready. So I've got these questions for you. And I think you're going to
have
wait.
I can't wait.
You're going to have the answer.
Are you turning the table on me?
No, I'm not.
Because usually I get asked you questions.
Right. So I want to know.
All right, go ahead.
What can the board of directors
Bring it
do
on.
to
enforce?
tighten up and enforce the rules and regulations of these facilities in their community? Because I could imagine that, you know, some of these.
Well, give me an example.
All right. Well, here's an example. So, can you limit the number of children that are allowed to be enrolled at a daycare in a community association? So, can you say, like, well, you have to limit your daycare to a capacity of 14 children or less? Or can you, or is that, I mean, who comes in there and says, nope, can do this, you can't do that?
Good question. So we're going to talk about the sort of a subset of these care homes, and that is daycare. Also, we did receive a text on transfer fees, and so I want to address that in a little bit. Don't go away. We're going to go ahead and talk about that. That's a really interesting subject. So when it comes to daycare, you have two types of daycare. You have small daycare, and large daycare. And the one you said, you sort of set me up with that softball pitch, and that is 14 or less children. So that is one type of daycare that is permitted in community associations. The other is 8 or less. So 14 or less, 8 or less, and the 8 or less is small daycare. So kind of confusing, but really it's just about the regulations that the daycare must comply with when it comes to the difference between small and large, 8 and 14. But what applies to both of them are what you alluded to earlier, and that is that if in fact the daycare does carry insurance, if they do carry insurance, so this is a home in a community association. Let's say it's a 100-unit
Let's say like out at
condominium.
Los Lagos. Oh, no, you want to go condo?
Condominium,
Okay.
yeah, because it just seems to be more of a difficulty in making sure that the daycare doesn't impinge on others, right? Because you have closer quarters. Plus, you're sharing the common area.
Right.
Let's say it's a playground,
Yeah.
right? So a daycare comes in. They have 14 children every day. 14 children every day at the community, 5 days a week, right? When, like you said, your cute little story about when you're a kid, you got your sandwich in your lunchbox and you went to the daycare.
Celery and
right.
peanut butter. Take a nap at 1 o'clock or you're
That's
in
it.
trouble.
Those were the days. And so in this case, if the daycare facility owner, renter, whatever, the person that's running it in the home, it doesn't have to be the owner of the home, it could be a tenant. If they carry insurance, then the association can require the association to be additional insured. Now, here's the interesting part of this.
There's a twist.
The twist is insurance is not required if, in fact, the facility owner discloses to all the parents or the guardians of the children that the facility owner doesn't have insurance and gets a waiver from all the parents. You just rolled your eyes.
Think there's a lot of
you
parents
just rolled your eyes
but-
saying, yeah. Well,
do you think there's a lot of parents that
nowadays?
would be like, you don't have any insurance? Yeah, I'm good. Give me a pen. Where do I sign? But my
sounds good to me.
concern is-
well, maybe they get a savings of $5
well, I'm
a
going
day.
to jump back then, and then I've got another type of
No,
facility.
we're not done. We have to
Right.
answer the question
But
first.
so, like you said, the 14 kids are in the common area. The board of directors has to make sure that what happens if they damage the playground, or
Right.
what happens if there's kids in the pool, and we know what kind of issues can arise from 14 kids in a pool.
Perfect. Okay, so what can the board do?
What can the board do to make sure?
Right. The board is not completely powerless. It's like any other violation in the community. The association board of directors can enforce the nuisance, the offensive activity, the pool rules, all those, as long as they're reasonable, right? All those provisions with respect to those 14 kids. Against who? The owner of the home, regardless of whether the owner home is renting to someone who's running a daycare out of the home. And so what can they do? They can impose what kind of different types of
restrictions,
discipline can they impose? What steps of enforcement can they take, Jonathan? Name one. You know one. Fining. The board of directors can impose reasonable fines.
They could take away the privileges
They can,
of the owner.
right.
Well, then that would
like
take
what kind of privileges?
Man, those poor
privileges
kids.
to get to their home?
Or
no.
boat?
To get to their car? No. To get through the front gate? No. But to use the recreational facilities, and that is really important to someone who's running a daycare.
Could you imagine? I just had a vision in my head: 14 kids sitting in a hearing in front of the board of directors. No, but
it would be the owner of the home, not with all. And also, what else can they do? So they can impose fines. Let's run through these first before you come up with your next question. They can fine. They can suspend the rights of the owner to use the recreational facilities, which is delegated to they rent a home to the people running it, and so those children will not be able to use the recreational facilities. They can also impose and this is a really effective tool, a special individual assessment or enforcement assessment. So there's a particular assessment the board of directors can impose against someone, an owner, for failing to comply for the costs that the association incurs, such as attorney's fees, against the owner. And that will be passed on through to, maybe the owner does run. I keep saying that in my scenario that the owner doesn't run the facility, that they rent the home to someone who runs it, because that is more the typical scenario. But it could be just an owner doing that. And so again, special individual assessment, that is an assessment. If it's in the CCNRs, this isn't in the Davis-Sterling Act, it must be in the CCNRs that allows the association's board of directors to impose against the owner the cost that the association incurs to try to compel the owners / facility daycare owners to gain their compliance. I lost my train of thought. To gain their compliance. So, for instance, their owner of the facility is allowing the children to get what? Give me an example. What are they doing at the pool? They're diving in the pool.
Yeah, or they're eating around the pool.
They have glass around the pool.
Well, hopefully they don't give little kids glasses, but
they could be up to the age of what if they're 14 years old?
Well, they're probably not at daycare. You would think maybe they're at like after school care or something, which would be another possible facility that.
I gotcha. Yeah, but, I guess I'm forgetting.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe
really
they're like the kids are pooping and peeing in the pool. I'm thinking maybe they're taking chalk and drawing all over the concrete outside of the
running
pool deck,
running
around the pool. Kid falls, and then they're on the playground. And
all right, so in that case, then the board of directors can impose there's the fines and suspension of rights and the special individual assessment for the costs that the association incurs to compel compliance, and they could hold a hearing, right? First you have to hold a hearing, and so the attorney for the association can send the owner a letter, and the association has to pay for that, right? And then the attorney can run the hearing, association has to pay for that, and the attorney has to send a post-hearing letter. So the association has to pay all that to the attorney, and they could pass that cost on to the owner through a special individual assessment.
Gotcha. Okay. One more question. You might have covered this. So my question is, can the board of directors actually set a certain set of guidelines or restrictions for these care facilities on when they are allowed to use the common area? You said that they can do these types of things if they're reasonable. So could they potentially say, okay, daycare business operator in the community association, you're only allowed to use the clubhouse and the playground between the hours of 12 and 5 p.m. Because in the evening, we want to be able to have the pool open for the rest of the residents to come down and enjoy the common area. Could they do that?
I like your question. So you're, and let me make sure I understand it. You're saying, can the association board of directors adopt a rule that is specifically targeting the particular
get them through the sites.
particular daycare in the community?
No, just say, hey, for the common area, we think that you should be able to use it with your business. Now, if they own the home and they're not operating their business and they're just going down there, obviously they're an owner.
Then my question to you is this a rule that applies to everyone? No one can use...
Anyone who has a daycare.
Oh, anyone who has a day can only use it during the hours of 12 to 5.
The pool or the common area or the clubhouse. Could you say, if you're operating a business such as a social rehab facility...
what do you think the answer to that question is? What do you think the answer? That's a great question. So the question again is whether a board of directors can adopt a rule that is only applicable to daycares in the community.
Yeah.
The answer is absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah, of course
If I were
not.
the owner
Jonathan?
of the business, I'd go to the board and I'd say, hey guys, I don't want to get on your bad side, so let's just shake hands on this agreement that I'm not going to have 15 kids running around the clubhouse while the ladies are trying to play bridge on Thursdays.
Wow, now you made your rule even worse because your justification is actually discriminatory against those children. So you're favoring the adults. How can the adults have a peaceful card game when there's children running around the community? The fair housing laws, remember 2 shows back? Remember 2 shows back?
I'll listen to it again.
The fair housing laws, both federal and state, prohibit discrimination based on family status, based on age, unless it is an age-restricted community. So that's an exception. We're going off on a little tangent. So the answer to your question is no, an association cannot adopt a rule that is only applicable to daycares.
All right. But they can adopt a rule that says the rest of the members can only use the pool from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Well, how about how about this then?
We don't have to stick on this. Beat this dead
No,
horse.
this is slightly different. So, can the association make sure that the owners of the daycare comply with the local regulations?
Absolutely.
Right. And what do we mean by local regulations?
I think you'd be talking about any state ordinances or city local ordinances on possibly what types of inspections need to be done to the facility, because I think that those are all important issues, especially you see all this
I agree.
stuff, right?
I concur.
And there's all these bacterias or just health and safety.
Right. I would say state's not local. Local would be the ordinances.
Okay.
So, for instance, it would be Placer County ordinances, Folsom City ordinances. But the state laws, that would be the regulations and the statutes.
So I think I got half of that right.
Right. Now, another little twist in this is that sometimes the cities and the counties, they have ordinances that concern criminal records, criminal record clearance for daycares, or fire safety, or things like tuberculosis checks, right? The facilities need to be safe. And so the communities associations, board of directors, they can explore that. And they can, if they have a daycare that is not run like Dr. Zazia's, she ran hers well. If they don't run it well, then you could indeed explore that. There is a new opinion by the General Counsel to the Department of Housing and Urban Development about criminal record clearance, about criminal background checks, that we're going to talk about next show, that completely turns things upside down when it comes to criminal background checks. It completely changes the whole ballgame. But that'll be next show. When we come back, why don't we dig into the text that we received?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I want to dig into that text. I want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend. And Frank's smiling today, so that's great. We'll be back after the break.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fussell. My company, Broadband Agreements, negotiates cable television and broadband right of entry, access, and compensation agreements for your communities. At Broadband Agreements, we offer a free review of all agreements with a signed letter of authorization. Broadband Agreements will improve your community's income and/or savings, or you don't pay us a dime. Visit us at broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. Or call me, Morgan Fussell, directly at 916-939-5026. That's 916-939-5026. Broadband Agreements online at broadbandagreements.com or 916-939-5026.
The challenges presented by today's economy and rebounding housing market is forcing many homeowners association boards of directors to operate their HOAs more like a business. It's a balancing act of trying to stay solvent and still provide homeowners with quality amenities and services. One of the main challenges HOA boards are facing is attempting to recover unpaid HOA fees owed by delinquent homeowners. Collection efforts are often very time-consuming. If you want to get the HOA fees collection monkey off of your back, call ATC Assessment Collection Group. ATC is an attorney-supervised collection company, providing collection and foreclosure services to HOAs in both California and Nevada's most recognizable communities. Get back to what you actually volunteered to do as an HOA board member. Effectively oversee your community. Call ATC today at 916-641-1410. That's 916-641-1410. Online at atcacg.com. That's atcacg.com. ATC Assessment Collection Group. Professional Parking Enforcement, or PPE, was created to provide effective parking solutions for all types of parking issues. PPE focuses on parking problems of HOAs and can quickly eliminate these problems through their system of property inspection, violation updating, ticketing, and enforcement. Contact PPE today at 702-283-0628, online at ppenv.com. PPE, promoting harmony in HOAs through parking and compliance enforcement. We take time to understand your community's needs.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We solve small problems before they become big ones.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We help make your community a better place to live.
Silver Creek Association Management.
It's what we do, because an association is more than just a bunch of homes. It's a community of people. We work with you to make better communities so homeowners can enjoy better lives.
Silver Creek Association Management. Online at sc-manage.com. That's sc-manage.com.
News, opinion, insight. AM 1380. The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Got to get to the text line.
Got to get to the text line. Okay, so this is the Saturday HOA Brunch. So we're everything HOAs, community associations. Text line is 916-747-4622. The text is as follows. Jonathan, follow me on this one.
All right. You want me to answer this one, or are you going to handle it?
I am the president of a small sub-association in a large HOA. So that is an association within an association. I was told by one of the HOA lawyers that, now there you go, you're going downhill from there, right? I was told by one of the HOA lawyers that the HOA failed to file paperwork on time for private transfer fees for one phase of the development. So developments are built in phases, a couple homes before they sell those homes, before they have another phase, they sell those homes. How do I check with the county, and what are the filing rules? How do I check with the county? What are the filing rules? It seems the HOA may not be entitled to claim the fees in a small number of homes. So we're talking about private transfer fees for one phase of development. Associations, a little bit of background. So what we're going to answer, the question is, did this association miss out on receiving private transfer fees for one phase of development because they didn't file something with the county? Do you follow me, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. Why don't you answer this for the listeners, and I'll be back.
And you'll be back. All right. So what is a private transfer fee? There's two types of private transfer fees. One type is where every community association receives fees upon a transfer of a home in the development.
It's revenue.
Right? It's a sale of a home, and upon a sale of a home through escrow, because the association has to give information and documents to the requesting owner through the escrow, such as what? The governing documents, and
bylaws, all that stuff.
Right, all that stuff, statements of assessments, And
reserve studies, possibly.
Possibly. And so every association has those. And the fees are ranging from $100 to $800. Okay, so in that range, that's what associations that's what they get in compensation for giving out these transfer documents upon a sale. There's another kind of transfer fee, however, and that is a few communities also get a transfer fee, which is typically a percentage of the home sale price in a community. And these are completely different than regular assessments or that other transfer fee. It's typically a percentage, something like that. And only a few associations get these because they're seriously limited. Not every association can now go out and say, hey, that's a great idea. When there's a sale in the community so that we can get more revenue, we're going to go ahead, upon that sale, get $2,000 every sale. It is subject to serious limitations pursuant to the Davis-Sterling Act, Civil Code Section 4580. And that is the exemption from the transfer fee limitations. Davis-Sterling Act, Civil Code Section 4580. And it provides that very few communities can get these. They have to have particular qualities, characteristics, and unless they have had this transfer fee before 2004. So perhaps this community didn't file their declaration of annexation, which it sounds like. How can that be done? It seems like it was a mistake by the developer. We need a little bit more information, and then we could give a full answer. But probably it is because the declaration of annexation wasn't filed. Jonathan, go ahead.
Caller has a question. Just popped up on this nice computer screen next to us. So we have a couple minutes left. Let's get the caller on and let's get the question.
Yes. My question is, I filed a meet and confer request with my homeowners association. We have prescribed deadlines that they must act upon that request within 45 days. It's dealing with a reimbursement assessment that was paid and received by the property management company, sent certified return receipt mail. I have not heard back within the prescribed deadline for my meet and confer request as an association member. What is the next step I need to do? I contacted property management company to find out why I didn't hear back, and the management company never contacted me. So, meet and confer meeting.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that. That is a fantastic question because it involves a couple of different topics. Number one is the meet and confer. That's Jonathan, right? The internal dispute resolution. The internal dispute resolution, different from the alternative dispute resolution, and also reimbursement assessment. So reimbursement assessments, that is a special individual assessment. And what, we're almost out of time. Okay, so what you need to do is do an ADR request next. You have to go to, the association you must make a request to the association for alternative dispute resolution. You have the IDR statutes, and they didn't comply with that. Now you go to ADR. That is the next step. Alternative dispute resolution. So it's a letter to the association requesting that they participate in mediation. All right?
Well, I think that this is a good question, and if you would like to call in, since we had a little bit of time left and you want to elaborate on this, give us a call next week, 888-923-1380, if you need a little bit more of assistance from the counselor. So thanks for listening this week, everyone. Have a happy Memorial Day. You got anything else?
That's it. Thanks for calling. Thanks for texting. Thanks for listening. And remember, if the association doesn't comply with their IDR, you go to ADR.
There you go.